should now be joined with Nuala, who is a spokesperson with Greyhound Action Ireland as part of the Irish Council Against Blood Sport, who is talking to us about a remarkable notice of injuries and deaths among greyhounds in the sport of late. Come to us with fact figures and plenty of data. Are you with us there, Nuala?
Hi, good morning there. How are you?
Hi. So first and foremost, with the Greyhound Action Ireland, or if you want to start with the Council Against Blood Sport, what was your formation? What do you guys do on a day-to-day?
Well, I can't speak for the Council Against Blood Sports now because Greyhound Action Ireland is a separate body.
Okay.
We campaign on the greyhound racing issue, and our immediate aim is to stop the public funding of greyhound racing. We want it phased out over a period of time. We don't think there's going to be a ban in the near future. We don't think there's the political will for a ban, but I mean, stopping public funding would be sufficient because the Irish greyhound industry can't survive without around 20 million from the public purse every year. And we would argue that not only is that funding cruelty, but it's also a dreadful waste of public taxpayers' money. So that's basically what we campaign on. So we lobby politicians, we liaise with the media, and basically inform the public, because an awful lot of the Irish public are absolutely astounded when they find out about this. They really don't know.
Yeah. Well, on that, you're coming to us today with the stats that nearly 400 greyhounds suffered injuries last year. 200 were killed, including 8 either shortly after or during or shortly after a race.
Yeah, well, every track has a freezer, and that's accepted as an inevitability of greyhound racing, that there are going to be dead dogs. You're going to put out dogs in the prime of their health on a track, and a few minutes later they're going to be dead, and 202 of them were dead last year. That's a 50% increase on the year before, 2023. 100 more were injured.
Yeah.
That's a fact of life. That's a fact of life. The greyhound racers accept that as a fact of life.
Yeah. It's awful to see the injuries, certainly, but most bizarrely to me was the 8 that died during or shortly after a race. Like, not that it's any way comparable, but if you're watching a human athletic sport or whatever, and people were, collapsing during or after their events, that would be a cause for concern. These are licensed organisations. These are supposed to have modus of operandi.
Yeah, it's a semi-state body.
So
that's organised.
How does that kind of happen? Like, are they not being looked after properly, or?
Well, when you put dogs out to race and you have them running around bends and you have them running at very, very high speed, then that's what's going to happen. And, these people profess to love their dogs, and I don't know any dog lover in this country who would deliberately put their dog in harm's way and put them at high risk of death and injury. We keep hearing about all the money they're spending on welfare and their concern about welfare, and of course they were forced into at least nodding in the direction of animal welfare after the 2019 RT Running for Their Lives documentary broadcast the fact that over 6,000 dogs were being killed every year. Well, it's not working. Their statistics are getting worse. I mean, the deaths and injury on the track last year were up 50% on the year before. And the track deaths, and I mean, they are horrendous. And I was watching a video recently of a dog running in a race in Donegal, and very soon after they left the traps, this dog was injured, and all you could hear over the official race commentary for the rest of that race was that dog screaming in pain. I mean, everything in you just recoiled at what was happening in front of you. And this is state-funded and state-sanctioned. It's state-funded cruelty to animals. But Dara, the real problem with greyhound racing, and I mean, every death on the track is hugely regrettable and shouldn't be happening. But the real problem is what's happening with all the dogs who never make it onto the track or who come off the track because they can't run fast enough anymore. There are thousands, and we just have the statistics in. Actually, we have to go through Dáil questions to get all these statistics. If I can give you some idea of the extent of the killing that's going on in greyhound industry in 2021 and 2022, these will be the first 2 years their new traceability system was operating. over 24,000 racing greyhounds were born on the island of Ireland. 15,000 of those remain on the island. The remainder were exported. Of the 15,000 which have remained on the island of Ireland, born in 2021, 2022, 6,251, 41% of those dogs are either dead or unaccounted for. The vast majority are dead. We don't know where the others are. They were never tracked. Now, the oldest of those dogs will have just turned 4. The youngest would be just 2. And almost half of them are dead or gone, disappeared. We don't know where they are. And their own traceability system is proving this. This is not anything they can, contest. They can't contest these figures. These are the figures they've given to us. So, I mean, as I said, it's state-funded cruelty to animals on a massive scale, and it wouldn't be accepted with any other breed of dog. If this were happening to labs or poodles or whatever, it wouldn't be accepted.
That was going to bring me to my next point. So do you feel, obviously you've got a passion for greyhounds specifically at your organisation, your firm, but do you feel greyhound racing then is particularly bad in this instance compared to other sports or other animal athletic events?
Well, I don't just have a passion for greyhounds. I have a passion for dogs, and greyhounds are dogs. Even though in this country they're called agricultural animals, and we presumably can do what we like to them. I've heard defenders of greyhound racing in the past few weeks defending their figures, saying, "Oh well, this happens in other sports, and people get injured in sports. Yeah, but people aren't put down when they get injured in sports. They're looked after and they're nursed back to full health." The reality of greyhound racing, now I can't speak for horse racing. I don't know what the figures are in horse racing, but the reality of greyhound racing is, when a dog gets injured, unless it's a very mild injury, that dog is dead, and that's the end of it. So greyhounds are disposable.
Yeah.
And they are there purely to make money for those who have them.
The official numbers that come out of Greyhound Racing Ireland say that 0.4% of dogs are injured annually and 0.2% are end up dead. But you dispute those figures. You don't think that actually accounts for the whole scene. That's just the participants in the actual events. That's not the whole greyhound scene.
Yeah, that's the number of race starts, Dara. That's pure spin. I mean, any individual greyhound will run multiple times in races around this country, 30, 40, 50 times. We are looking at the percentage of the dogs in the racing pool who are killed, not the number of times races are held or the number of races that are held. We're looking at the death rate in the racing pool in the given year, which is last year. And that's what we're working out our percentage on. And that is almost 5% of the racing pool died on the track last year.
And then what of the likes of vets or handlers? Surely there should be someone there to keep people involved and safe and keep the dogs happy and healthy as well.
But you really can't, because once you let those dogs out of the trap, then those accidents are going to happen. And, I have been in contact with somebody who used to be involved in the industry, who got out of the industry because he had a huge issue with the fact that they had changed the tracks from grass to sand, and the quality of sand being used in Ireland, he would argue, is very, very poor. And that increases the risk to the dogs running on the track, because the surface is not, it's not sound under their feet, and they fall and they skid, and that's how these injuries occur. So, when they say greyhounds love to race, yes, they do. And anyone who's had a companion greyhound animal will tell you greyhounds love to race, but they don't love to be put into a track where they have to run around bends and where they have to run in the company of 5 other dogs. And that's what causes the accidents to happen, So it's an inherent part, and they can't clean it up. They cannot clean it up. They just can't. And that's and this is testament to that fact. They say that they're putting more and more money into welfare, and yet the death rate is increasing. And you see, in Ireland, it's based on speed as well. In other countries, in Britain, it's not based on speed. In Ireland, it's based on speed. So those dogs are running at very high speed.
Yeah. And you believe on this front, you've got public opinion, you've got a few polls with a 2/3 majority on your side, and you've got petitions of up to 400,000 signatures urging for change.
Yeah, urging an end to the public funding of greyhound racing. So I'm sure there are people who want this funding stopped, not necessarily that they care so much that the dogs are being killed and dying at such a rate. But, you turn on your radio every day in the week and you hear people on, kids who are not getting the medical treatment. I heard on the radio last week, or was it the other day, 200 or 300 prisoners sleeping on the ground in Irish prisons. Now, people may not feel a lot of sympathy for prisoners, but there's something wrong in a state where that's happening. And there's something wrong in a state where waiting lists to see doctors are 3 and 4 and 5 years long. And at the same time, we can find 20 million. And remember, Dara, funding for greyhound racing and horse racing, it's the only public funding in this country that's underwritten by law. So there is a piece of legislation which mandates governments to give this funding. Like, it's bizarre,
And do you know what the outcome of that is? Because you've some numbers here. The initial investment back in the early, around 2001, 2002, was about 12 million put in, and that's gone up to about 20,000 per year, or 20 million, per year. Is that just a grant given to these firms, or?
Well, no,
not to bring it all down to numbers, but does the Irish government get anything back for that?
Well, you see, initially it was tied to the betting tax, and the betting tax on all activity in this country from 2001 to, we think, about 2009, the betting tax on, off-course betting tax on all activities in this country, everything, was ring-fenced and given back to horse racing and greyhound racing. And then a couple of years ago, the FAI started querying this, why other sports that are bet on weren't benefiting from this betting tax. And then it emerged that since I think it's 2009, that was actually no longer the case, that betting tax was being put into the exchequer and was being taken from the exchequer and given to horse racing and greyhound racing. The equivalent to the betting tax, what the betting tax was bringing in, was being given back. Now, that, of course, strengthened other sports. Then they were saying, well, why isn't it divided far more equally? Because they reckon that about the last study I saw done on this, that greyhound racing accounts for about 7% of the betting tax, and yet it gets 20% of the betting tax profits given to it every year. It's 80-20, the divide between horse racing and greyhound racing. The Greyhound Board they've got Jim Power Economics to do a number of reports. We got the last Power Economics report looking at the economic value of the greyhound industry. We got some analysis done on that. And when we looked at the figures on that and interrogated them, it was very clear that it was hugely exaggerated, the value that was given to it's 130 million, they reckoned it was worth to the economy. Now, when we looked at those figures, that report included coursing greyhounds in the Republic. It included coursing and racing greyhounds in Northern Ireland. It started dogs racing much later than is reality. It left them in the racing pool much longer than is the reality. It included exported dogs in here and all of this was done to inflate the value. Now, we sent that report, which we had done analysing the Power Economics report, to the Public Accounts Committee, the last Public Accounts Committee. They took that so seriously that they wrote to the Greyhound Board and asked them to come before it to answer the questions that were raised in the analysis, and the Greyhound Board refused to attend. They claimed it would clash with, compromise some forthcoming legal action, which had absolutely nothing to do with our analysis. So, they haven't returned, greyhound racing hasn't returned anything to the Irish economy in over 25 years. Its pre-tax profit in 2023 was less than €1 million. It couldn't stand on its own 2 feet economically. Now, if it can't stand on its own 2 feet economically, the question has to be, how can it be so significant to the Irish economy that it needs to continue to get public funding? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They can't have it both ways. They can't claim it's such an economically significant activity that it has to be publicly funded, and yet it can't survive without public funding. So, look, it's time now that the political parties, Fianna Fail and Fine Gael especially, they seem to be allowing a small number of TDs who are directly involved and have close contacts with the greyhound racing industry. They seem to allow a small number of TDs in both parties to dictate party policy. And we would lobby a lot of TDs, in all the political parties. And what we are getting back, and what we have been getting back from Fianna Fail and Fine Gael TDs, is quite a lot of them are not in favour of public funding of greyhound racing. They just simply aren't. They agree with us. It should be stopped.
So, ideally, you'd like to try and phase it out. You mentioned that Wales is working on a programme for that. What would that look like? What would that look like in terms of timescale? In terms of, you said there's 20,000 dogs born per year. What do we do with all these dogs?
There's not 20,000 bought now, Darren. No, you'd be looking at between 8 to 12,000 dogs born every year.
Oh, you
would be looking at that was 2 years. I gave you that figure. You'd be looking at phasing out the breeding. You just stop breeding dogs, and you would be looking at putting in place a proper homing system for the dogs that are already there. And that would have to include rescues around this country who are not funded by the government to home greyhounds, who have to struggle along, and they're inundated, many of them, with unwanted greyhounds. And that would include bringing them on board. The Greyhound Board have 2 care homes, which again they put in place after the 2019 RTE programme. And in recent weeks we have discovered that actually those 2 care homes last year homed 36 dogs. The sum total of 36 dogs for €291,000 handed over to 2 care homes to home 36 dogs. Again, complete waste of public money. Private rescues around this country who get nothing from the state are homing far more dogs than that, and far more racing greyhounds than that.
And sorry, finally, if you said there is some pushback seemingly from higher ups to not phase it out, if phasing out was ruled out, what kind of reforms and changes would you like to see on the track, off the track, and in the boardroom, as it were?
If they don't phase it out.
If it wasn't phased out, you'd like to see at the very least improvements and changes so that these figures don't continue.
Well, they are improving, or that's what they're claiming, and their figures are getting worse. I'm not in the business of, having fewer dogs killed on tracks or having fewer injuries on tracks. I'm in the business of ending greyhound racing. So, if the Greyhound Board, with 20 million every year, can't come up with ways to improve and to stop dogs dying on tracks, well, I'm not going to get involved in that discussion. That's not for me to get involved in. I don't want greyhounds dying on tracks. I don't want thousands of them being killed because they can't run fast enough. I just don't want this industry to exist.
Well, thanks so much, Nuala Donlon, spokesperson for Greyhound Action Ireland.